Oh man, holding out for a hero. I feel like that's my wife's anthem. Hey, seriously, give it up for the band, everybody. You're only going to get Bonnie Tyler resets here at Crosspoint. Hey, welcome, friends. If we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Scott Fusell, and I'm so excited you're tuning in with us as we continue our series At the Movies 10. For the past decade, we've taken a look at the biggest movies of the year and the spiritual fibers that weave in, around, and through each of them. We're excited to dive into one of this year's biggest and best films, and we're thrilled that you're here with us as we do. This weekend, we welcome lead pastor Curt Walters back to the stage as we take a look at Spiderman: No Way Home. There's just something about summer superhero blockbusters. We cannot get enough of them. Saving the world and rescuing others, that resonates with us. And what does it look like to be a hero in real life? That is the question that Curt's going to be launching us into this week. Before sending it into the venue for Curt's message, we want to take a second to say thanks for spending some time with us today. You could literally be just about anywhere in the world right now, but you chose to be with us. Please know we are so very grateful and honored that you decided to be with us. If you've joined us before, welcome back. If this is your first time with us, you're probably thinking, this place is a little different. Well, if so, good. That's the point. We built this place for people who like their church a little less churchy, for people who may have given up on church but hadn't quite given up on God. If that's you, we're especially grateful you decided to be with us this week. Whatever the case, wherever you are on your journey, we know you have options and you chose to be with us. And for that, again, we want you to know we are really, really grateful. The cool part about joining us during At the Movies 10 is, if this is your first time with us, you've got some free movie tickets coming your way. And here's how you get them. If you text the word connection to the number on your screen, or you fill out the form next to the stream, and you let us know your preference, whether that's in-person movie tickets or a digital platform, and you're sure to include your mailing address and your email, we're going to drop them in the mail to you this week, simply as our way of saying thank you for joining us today. Hey, and for those of you who've been with us before, welcome back. We'd love to hear from you as well. Please be sure to fill out that digital connection card and hit send on it at the end of the service. Okay, while you're working on that, here are the things that we need you to know about Crosspoint this week. Here's your top three. Number one, if you're eager to make a difference in the life of someone nearby, the Crosspoint Blood Drive is coming back in 3 weeks from this Sunday. You can change a life by giving life in the Crosspoint parking lot on Thursday, September the 8th, 2022 from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. One donation, check this out, one donation can save up to 3 lives, people. That's a great reminder that, like Spider-Man, who we're going to be talking about later, not all heroes wear capes. So roll up your sleeve, give a little of that liquid game changer, and potentially save a life in the process. You can find out more information and schedule your time for the blood drive on the What's Happening tab of crosspointweb.org or via the Crosspoint app. Number two, are you new or newish to Crosspoint? If so, we want to offer a special invite to our upcoming orientation of sorts, Explore Crosspoint. Whether it's the come as you are atmosphere, the music, or the teaching that you can take home every single week, we do things a little differently here, and we do that intentionally. We work to meet you exactly where you are, and the chances are likely that that's probably not too far from where many of us land as well. So if you're interested in learning the why behind the what, please join us for one of these in-person events Thursday, September the 15th or Sunday, September the 18th, right here in the Crosspoint Commons. A light meal and childcare will be provided. All you have to do is RSVP under the What's Happening tab online or via the Crosspoint app. Number three, CSM's month-long back-to-school bash, The Chase, wraps up this weekend with a red carpet event and some final competitions and some special appearances you're not going to want to miss. And of course, there's going to be lots of fun and a dessert after party. Doors open at 5:50 on Sunday evening, August the 28th, and we look forward to seeing your 7th through 12th grader this Sunday evening, where the winning team will be revealed after a month-long of competition. One last thing we want to make you aware of, next weekend is Labor Day, which means early weekend service after party, people. Hey, if your weekend plans are going to be taking you away, or if you're looking to start your weekend early, or if you're just looking for a good reason to connect with others here at Crosspoint, join us next Thursday for the early weekend service and stay for the after party. We'll have food, we'll have beverages, both adult-friendly and kid-friendly, campfires, and friends. So grab your family, maybe a neighbor or two, and join us for the early weekend service next week, and let the good times roll afterwards. So, those are the highlights, friends. If you're interested in knowing more about all the goings on here at Crosspoint, please head over to crosspointweb.org for more details and opportunities to connect. Now, we've got a great service plan for you today, and we're so excited you're here. Before we dive in, we need you to do something really, really important. Today, we're going to be sharing in communion, the Mass, the Lord's Supper. however you like to refer to it. So take a moment, run over to the kitchen and grab some bread or some crackers and maybe a beverage in case you choose to participate. Wine, juice, a Coke, any bread item and any beverage will do. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the service. Now let's talk about today's service. As I mentioned earlier, Curt is back this week and we're diving into Spider-Man, No Way Home. He'll be pulling the fibers of faith we find spun throughout Peter Parker's journey and shining a light on the hero within us all. Before turning it over to Curt, we hope today's teaching helps you unleash your greatness, your hero within. So thanks again for being with us, friends. Now let's take a look at a few scenes from Spider-Man, No Way Home.
Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
When you botched that spell where you wanted everyone to forget the Peter Parker Spider-Man, we started getting some visitors. From every universe.
Hello, Peter. You're not Peter Parker.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
There are others out there. We need to send them back. So, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You know, all this is kind of your mess. I know a couple of magic words myself, starting with the word please.
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
What do you mean?
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Don't.
Look, there has to be another way.
There isn't. They're a danger to our universe.
You're not gonna take this away from me. Peter, you're struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose.
This is all my fault. I can't save everyone.
Wow, you guys excited about Spider-Man this weekend? My word, wasn't that amazing? Well, hey, we love this series every year. We hope you do. If you're here for the first time, and we hope you enjoy this, and we hope it's your first time many times. We look at the fibers of faith of some of these movies that hit the big screen each year, and so we're going to do that today, and examine some of the spiritual questions that these things present to us. So my name's Curt. It's great to have you with us. Let's make some noise for those tuning in online with us this weekend, man. So good to have you guys with us. YouTube online, Crosspoint on demand. Now, a couple things I'd like us to do real quick before we do anything else. If you haven't started the connection card yet, go ahead and do that. I know we asked you to earlier, but I'm going to want to walk you through some things later. Let's get the logistics, name, email, all that stuff out of the way so we can kind of be ready to respond there. And then for those of you tuning in at home, I need you to make a kitchen run. We need you to go to the kitchen, grab some bread, crackers, juice, wine, some beverage. We're gonna share in something called the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist later on. You might want to participate in that. If you're in the room, you should have got a bag like this that has what you will need for that. And so we're just helping you get prepared for later on in our service. Well, we're looking at Spider-Man, No Way Home, one of the recent releases of the Spider-Man franchise. The cool thing about this one, this came out late 2021. They are re-releasing it in like 2 weeks. They're going to actually add 11 minutes to the movie and re-release it to the theaters. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, or as a result of your time here this weekend, you're like, I want to check that out, you're going to be able to do that. And the cool thing about this Spider-Man, I love Spider-Man because he's so real. And in this version of the Spider-Man franchise, Spider-Man gets revealed. Peter Parker no longer is kind of hidden and Spider-Man's a separate person, but this friendly neighborhood web slinger known as Spider-Man, he gets unmasked and he now really doesn't have a normal life because everyone knows who he is. And he has some decisions to make that are actually going to affect lots and lots of people that are very, very important to him. And so this is one of those moments where it really, he kind of discovers what it truly means to be a superhero, what it truly means to be Spider-Man. Now, it's fascinating to me how we get really kind of enthralled in this idea of superheroes, right? Superheroes intrigue us. There's something about them that inspire us. I don't know if it's the fight, the battle, if it's the beauty of the rescue. I mean, we sometimes dream about this. I mean, whether it's Spider-Man or maybe you're more into like Wonder Woman or, Thor. Any Thor fans out there? 2 of you, awesome. We're going to look at Thor next weekend, or, perhaps for you, it's Captain Underpants. Maybe that's your superhero choice, because that's where your life is right now. But superheroes call us to something higher, and when we see this, it inspires us. Speaking of inspiring us, last weekend, I was away taking my son with my wife to drop him off at campus. We have 2 kids in college now, and as many of you have been doing over the last few weeks, it was a super exciting and yet emotional weekend. I'm a very emotional person, so I have a hard time fighting some of those emotions. We have 2 kids now at Butler University, Bulldogs out there, Bulldog fans. 3 of you, awesome, all right. It's so funny because my daughter's been there now going into her 3rd year. My son has started as a freshman year, and he used to make fun of her for going there. He's like, I'm not going there. You pay so much money. She's going to be in so much debt, and that's stupid. And so, he looked at like all these other schools, and then eventually he's like, I probably ought to check out Butler. And he went on a tour, and after his tour, after meeting with the business department, which is where his major is, he goes, oh my gosh, I want to go here. And I'm like, right? Every time I go on a tour, I want to sign up to go here, because there's just something about it. And it was really kind of interesting last weekend when we were at this parent-student convocation on Sunday morning. It was a moment, it was kind of the last parent moment on campus. You've left your kids, dropped them off, and then you have this moment where you hear from the president and some of the deans, and then you say your goodbyes and you go. And we're sitting in this room, not with our son, but just listening to some of the leaders from the university, and they're talking about the Butler Way. And perhaps you know about the Butler Way, maybe through the basketball program, but it really kind of is emulated all throughout this community. And they're talking about the Butler Way really is about selfishness being denied. Like, we don't be selfish as a community. The Butler Way talks about this idea of kind of demanding commitment from one another to the greater community, of accepting reality and paying attention to what's going on. And yeah, we're here for academics, but listen, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is we're learning to be good individuals and human beings. And if you see somebody struggling, you stop and you ask, hey, are you okay? You pause for a moment and care, and you have empathy. And I'm listening to all these things, and I'm hearing them talk about putting others above self. And when that happens, everybody wins. And I'm sitting there in tears. And I'd been in tears all weekend, but I'm in tears, and all of a sudden I'm like, dang, this is why my kids love it here. This is why they chose this place. Because there's something about that way of life that inspires us, and it calls us to something more. And so today I want us to take a look at what is a hero. And I'm going to kind of make the connection between why I was so inspired at Butler and what it means to be an everyday hero. Because perhaps a hero, isn't so much about having superhero powers. Maybe it's something more accessible than that. And I would imagine the thing that unites us all together when it comes to heroes is we probably didn't wake up today and say, I'm going to go do hero stuff today. I'm going to be a hero today, right? None of us probably did that. All right, and so when we think about what it means to be a hero, it helps sometimes to think about the opposite of being a hero. What's the opposite of being heroic? It's not necessarily being a coward. It's really just being ordinary. It's being an ordinary Joe or an ordinary, Jolene, right? Like, you're just an ordinary person. And so this word hero is really an interesting word because it comes from the word demigod, which is kind of a half god, like a partial or not full God. That's like the definition. And so a demigod is really somebody who doesn't fully have it all together, somebody who doesn't really have it all figured out. They're doing the best that they can. I think that's why we see these superheroes and we're drawn to them, because we relate to them. We see that they struggle as well. They have moments of outage just like we do. They have just enough to get the job done. And somehow, in some way, God allows people through this person to experience some kind of transcendent experience of God himself. That's what heroes do. Now, again, let's be honest. Most of us, we probably don't feel like a hero, right? We didn't wake up this morning and go, oh, man, I'm going to go out and be a hero today. But guess what? Some of you are. In fact, let me just give an example. How many of you are somehow connected to a volunteer team or are volunteering tonight here at Crosspoint? Let me just see your hand real quick. Yeah, look at that. Let's like celebrate these people that are volunteers. You know why? Because they're heroes. They're ordinary, unlikely heroes, because when we think about what they're doing in some way through the roles they're playing, God is allowing you to experience him in some transcendent way through these individuals. See, I think maybe a better definition of a hero is that heroes see what everybody else sees, but they choose to do what no one else chooses to do. I mean, I think at the core, that's what heroes do. I mean, they walk in here and they might see, oh man, there's kids, and somebody needs to teach them about God, and that's awesome. I'm glad somebody does that. But heroes go, you know what? No, I am going to take responsibility to help make that happen. Oh man, I love the welcoming atmosphere. I love the coffee. I love having that when I walk in. That's amazing. I think we all appreciate that. We love the music. We love the experience that happens. And yet heroes go, okay, I see that just like everybody else, but they choose to not do what everybody else does. They say, no, I'm going to be a hand raiser. I'm going to jump in on this. See, heroes have this counterintuitive swimming upstream mentality. All right, they have this sense of seeing things different than everyone else. All right, and so they see it, but they say, okay, I'm not going to be content with just sitting here like everybody else. And so what I hope we can kind of discover this weekend is that the most unlikely people make the most likely heroes. And if you're walking in here today feeling a bit like you're an unlikely person, then man, let me just tell you, you are in the right place this weekend. So we're going to take a look at a guy, a profile of a character from the Old Testament that you've probably heard of before, regardless of your spiritual orientation or experience, a guy by the name of Moses. And Moses, he's got a lot of movies made about him. Moses was an unlikely person for God to use as a hero. In fact, Moses was born into a time in the world where there was a Pharaoh in the nation of Egypt who was suppressing the the Israelites in slavery, and he issued a decree that all Israelite babies, all baby boys, when they are first born, are to be killed, are to be murdered. He's trying to suppress the nation of Israel. And so Moses' mom did something really heroic. She put him in a basket and kind of put him in the Nile River and shoved him off. And he made his way down, floating down the river, and the Pharaoh's daughter saw him, took him in, began to raise him in Pharaoh, the emperor of Egypt's home, in his palace. And so it had to be a little different for him growing up, because he grew up in a multiracial home. He grew up in a home that was not his native origin country. Right? His background was an Israelite, but he was being raised in Pharaoh's home in Egypt. And then as he became an adult, there was this moment where he saw someone mistreated from his native people, the Israelites, by one of the Egyptian commanders, and he lashes out and actually kills this commander. Now, because of the shame that he carried, because of the regret from this mistake of killing this guy, he had to do what many people have to do at some point in their life. He had to move back home. Now, as I was thinking about this story right here, I was just thinking, I wonder how many of us can relate to that. I wonder how many of us have had a moment where we've had to move back home. Perhaps you got out on your own and maybe fell on financial hardships. You had to move back home, or went to college or school or trade school, and you're on your own and things just didn't go the way you hoped and you had to move back home. Or perhaps you experienced divorce, and again, for a season you moved back home. The good news today is that didn't stop God from using Moses. And I hope that's good news to you. So we're going to pick this story up in Exodus chapter 3. Here's how it begins to play out. It says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock into the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angels of the Lord appeared to him, think about this for a moment, in flames of fire from within a bush. All right, a little weird. Moses saw that through the bush, that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So this was fascinating for Moses. He probably was like, yeah, apparently I had a little too much poppy seed in the bread last night, feeling a little hallucinatory right now. I'm actually seeing a bush burning, but it's not burning up, right? This would be like the original definition of something being lit right here, right? Like this bush was lit. And so the bush was lit and on fire, but it wasn't burning up. So Moses did what any ordinary person would do. He thought, I will go over and see this strange sight and why the bush doesn't burn up. And when he travels over to take a look at the bush, he ends up having a conversation with God through the burning bush. And God says to him, Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. And again, let me just pause for a moment right here, because maybe you can relate to that right there. Perhaps you're someone who has been suffering. Maybe you've been suffering, from some depression, or you've been paralyzed by fear, paralyzed by doubt, and you just feel like you cry out to God, and you just wonder if he ever hears you. Kind of like the Israelites right here. Let me just assure you that if you haven't seen God move on your behalf, it doesn't mean he's not there. I mean, he says right here, I have seen the misery of my people. You know what that means? It means he sees you. He says, I've heard their cries. That means he's listening. He hears you. And then he goes on. He says, so now go, Moses. I want you to go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And I would imagine Moses, after he's kind of done with the shock and awe of what just happened right here. I mean, I think he's probably like, guys, can I tell you the story again about this bush that didn't burn up? And his friends are probably like, enough already, Moses, on the burning bush. We've heard it enough. After he kind of got past that part, I think then it set in, like, what actually God said to him. I think he was like, oh my gosh, God, you're asking me to do what? I mean, the crazy thing about the bush burning was crazy enough, but what you're asking me to do is even more crazy than that. And Moses, his instinctive answer when God said, here's what I want you to do, was no. You got the wrong guy. Hard pass. Zippa, nada, no, not happening. I'm not going anywhere but Midian. And in case you forgot, God, I'm the guy living in my parents' basement playing, Minecraft all night and eating Doritos. I don't think I'm the makings of a leadership guy right here, in case you haven't noticed. And then over these next few moments, Moses gives God a number of excuses. And these excuses are both interesting, they're kind of hilarious. I think they're relatable to you and I. And so we're going to look at a few of these, and more importantly, we're going to look at the response that God gives to Moses, because I think these might give us some courage to actually become the ordinary and likely heroes that God may be calling you to be. So here's the first excuse. Moses, verse 11, he says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Now, this wasn't necessarily an identity crisis right here for Moses. He wasn't like, hey, let me get my driver's license. I don't know who I am. It wasn't that. He also wasn't drunk. All right, he was sober at this moment. It's just, the question is more like, God, I don't know that I have what it takes. That's probably a question we've all had at some point. God, I don't know, man. As I step into this, I don't know if I have what it takes to be successful right here. I mean, things have been kind of down and out for me. And God responds to Moses right here like an incredible, incredible way. Here's what he says. He says, Moses, guess what? He says, I will be with you. And perhaps Moses begins to realize, God's like, hey, listen, I'm not all that concerned with the fact of whether you know who you are or not. I'm more concerned that you know who I am, because I'm going to be with you. See, Moses probably thought, man, I'm an unlikely hero. There's no way I can do this. I don't have any position. I don't have any standing to do anything significant. All right, this is a task that's way bigger than anything I can undertake. And yet God's response is very encouraging. Hey, listen, Moses, my presence, it can overcome your imperfections. Perhaps the same is true for you and I. Sometimes we get so focused on what's wrong with us. We get so focused on what disqualifies us that what we feel like we don't have. And God, I think he often wants to remind us, hey, I can overcome those things. Next excuse Moses gives God, Moses says, suppose, which I love the word suppose. He's like, suppose God, which is kind of like, God, I don't know if you've really thought about this too much, but I've given a lot of thought to this. I know you're kind of busy, running the world. But suppose I go to the Israelites, all right, not even Egyptians. I mean, I'm just going to my own people, but suppose I go to them, and I'm not even saying I'm going to do this, God, I'm just hypothetically speaking. Suppose I go to them, to the Israelites, and they say, the God of your father sent me to you, and they ask me a question, and I don't know how to answer. It's not even a high-level, like, theology question. This is like a simple question. But they ask me, okay, what is his name? What is his name? What am I supposed to tell them? And that question alone, Moses, like, that question will stump me. Now, what's amazing is God's answer right here is so profound. In fact, he gives us for the very first time his name through this conversation with Moses. It's actually amazing. God says to Moses, just tell him, I am who I am. This is what you're to say to the Israelites. Just tell him, I am has sent me to you. Now, this might be one of the most beautiful definitions of who God is to us. He's like, I am? He's like, yeah, I am. Well, I am what? He's like, well, I am. Like, I'm whatever you need me to be. I'm the father to the fatherless. I'm the encourager to the down and out. I'm the friend to the lonely. I'm the comforter to the brokenhearted. I'm the strength to the powerless. I'm the hope to the hopeless. I'm the deliverer to those who feel like they're in bondage. Whatever I am, I am whatever you need me to be. And perhaps in that moment, Moses thought, listen, God, I don't have the power to do exactly what you need me to do. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, where you focus more on what you're not than what you are. And if you're like most human beings, you probably focus more on what you are versus what you're not versus what you are. You know, Marcus Buckingham, who's kind of the father of the whole Strength Finders movement, he says, you know, when you study lasting, successful people, he says you'll find that the one thing they have in common is that they focus on their strengths and they manage their weaknesses. See, God says to Moses right here, hey, you're probably right, Moses. You probably don't have the power. Right? You probably don't have exactly all that it takes, but that doesn't stop me from calling you to step into this thing in front of you. Not because of what you're not, but because of who I am. He's like, you just focus on that, Moses, and worry a little less about what you're not. Moses goes on to his next excuse. He says, well, what if they don't believe me? Or even worse, what if they listen to me and they say, the Lord did not appear to you? What if they question my experience with you? And you know what God does next? He does something actually fascinating and somewhat horrifying at the same time, at least for some of us. He took what was in Moses' hand, and I don't know if you've ever just seen pictures of Moses or depictions of what Moses was like. He always had a staff. He's like, Moses, what is that in your hand? He's like, well, it's a staff. All right? And for several years after this, God would always use that staff to kind of display to Moses his power through Moses' life. And so he says to Moses, hey, Moses, throw that staff on the ground right there. And he throws it on the ground, and it turns into what? Anybody remember what it turns into? A snake. Yeah, a snake, right? I mean, I don't know about you. My little Birkenstocks have been running as fast as they could the other way in that moment, right? And I don't know if snakes are that way for you. Perhaps it's spiders. You're like, yep, put me around a spider. Maybe it's toddlers for you. You're like, yep, put a toddler in the room, I'm out. All right? Whatever it is, like, it was that thing that for Moses, it elicited fear in him. And God tells him, he says, okay, here's what I want you to do, Moses. I now want you to pick up the snake. So Moses, he reaches down. Now, I don't know how long this little exchange took for this to take place. If it were me, I'd be like, okay, God, I need a little more than that. Do I pick it up in the back? Do I pick it up behind the head? Like, just pick it up is not going to do the job. Like, I need exactly where the handle is and what you want me to do. Well, we don't know how that went down. All we know is Moses picks up the snake and it immediately turns back into a staff, which was just kind of a simple display from God to Moses of who has the power. So Moses, for whatever reason, he feels like he doesn't have the position, he doesn't have the power, and now it also seems like he's like, yeah, I don't have the skill to do this. Listen, God, I'm not a leader, I'm not an out front person, I'm not the kind of person that has organizational thoughts. Listen, I don't even have the knowledge, I'm kind of new at this whole thing. And again, let me ask you, I don't know if you've ever felt that way, where you're like, I just don't know that I have what it takes, I don't know that I have the skills. And let me ask you kind of a rhetorical question. If God's not concerned with that, then should I be concerned with that? I mean, it's rhetorical, but the answer seems to be no, right? I mean, if God doesn't seem to be concerned, he knows your limits, he knows your limitations, he knows your weaknesses. So Moses, he goes on to the next response, and he says, well, pardon your servant, Lord. And I love this because he's like, God, I don't know a lot about you yet. I don't know if you're the kind of guy that gets frustrated, but if you are a God that gets frustrated, then you're probably pretty frustrated with me right now. So pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. And everybody's going, no kidding, Moses. We're not looking for like an I have a dream speech from you. It's obviously you're not going to deliver that. Moses is like, no, I'm slow with speech. All right, I'm slow with speech and tongue. I actually don't speak good. And then God asked Moses some very pointed questions. It says, the Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them, Moses, just by the way, just answer this for me. Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? He's like, am I not the one who actually put your mouth on your face? He says, now, would you just go? I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. I mean, Moses is pretty much like, I don't have the position, I don't have the power, I don't have the skills, and now he's like, I don't have the words. I don't have the words. And guess what? God's not surprised by any of that. See, I don't think God gets concerned about our weaknesses the way you and I get concerned with our weaknesses. He's like, no, I actually chose you because I'm going to put myself on display through your weaknesses, Moses. And see, the same thing is true for you and for me. I believe God's calling us all today to be unlikely heroes. And the question is, will we step up and will we step out and become that unlikely hero? I think it's why we connect with movies like this, Spiderman. I think it's why we see Peter Parker and we're like, oh my gosh, what if my life could take that trajectory? We see the insecurities. We see the human factor. Moses, he wraps this whole thing up and he says one more time, he's like, pardon your servant, Lord, but one more time, would you please send someone else? He's like, would you just please look around? I am not your guy. I mean, can you see if there's anyone else who can do the job? Because I don't think I'm it. See, Moses, he didn't have the power, didn't have the position, didn't have the skills, he didn't feel like he had the words. But see, none of that was an obstacle for God. God wasn't asking him to be an unlikely hero because of his skills, his power, his words, or because of his position. I mean, those are the pillars of success in, maybe corporate America. But these aren't the secret ingredients in God's economy. See, Moses had something that made him an unlikely hero that every single one of us has. This is in you. And it was this. He was available. He simply chose to be willing. Moses was willing. And see, that's the fabric of unlikely heroes. And see, you and I, we have that within us as well. And see, something happens when you choose to be willing. Because when you choose to be willing, you say, okay, God, I'm going to step in and do this. What you have to begin to do is you begin to put yourself aside and you begin to put the needs of other people around you ahead of your own. I mean, what you're really saying is, I'm going to come alongside you and I'm going to put you in front of me. And I'm going to put their needs in front of mine. And I'm going to go to the back of the line. See, this is the stuff that heroes, unlikely heroes, are made of. There's a powerful moment, if you've seen this movie, and if not, I'm not going to spoil it for you. There's a powerful moment where Peter has this decision to make because he's working on some things that are going to affect a lot of people. And he says, all these people have problems. I just need to send them back because they all kind of joined his multiverse. He's like, I just need to send them back. All right? They're not my problem. And May, his aunt, comes in and says, what do you mean they're not your problem, Peter? He's like, yeah, the best chance of helping them is to send them back. I can't do anything for them. And she says, is that the best decision for them, or is that just what's easiest and best for you? She's like, look around. This is what we do. We help people. What's this look like today? It gets lived out in ordinary, simple ways. I saw a blog this past week of a friend of mine who's an educator. And it was inspiring and disturbing to me at the same time. I want to read it for you. It's called Hands Free Mama, is who wrote this. It's a mom. She said, I noticed something on back to school orientation day that I can't stop thinking about. As excited students and parents milled around the high school halls, I chatted with a teacher that our family knows quite well. Worriedly, she described a few of the new challenges she faced this year on top of the usual ones. There was no denying what I saw when I looked into her eyes. Her shine had been dulled. I quickly motioned for my teenage daughter to come across the hall to join us, and I said to her, this teacher is going to need some extra moral support this year. And she said, I said it with an urgency. My daughter picked up on my urgency, and she knew exactly what I was asking her to do. And the mom went on to say, I've been attending, back to school nights for my kids for years, and yet, she said, for the very first time in my life, I said these words to my daughter that I've never said to her before, but that's just where we are in our world right now. And she said, I promise you, whether you're aware of it or not, there's educators in each of your lives that are probably feeling the same way, that the shine has dulled to the point of impending crisis in their lives. She said, we got to the first day of school, went well. The second day of school, she said, I got a message from this teacher. And she just shot me a message and said, her timing is always perfect. And she was referring to my daughter dropping by to brighten her day. On day 3, another message came through. This girl is such a breath of fresh air. She said, when my daughter got home, I thanked her for checking in on her teacher. And she said, I just want to know, what are you doing that's making her feel so special? And her daughter simply shrugged and said, I don't know, I just talked to her. I just go in and ask how she's doing, see if I can help, treat her like a person. In other words, she humanizes her teacher. This is what unlikely heroes, high school students, this is how they live heroically. The question I want us to ask ourselves is your humanity showing? Are you choosing to be willing? And when we're willing, it requires something of us because it requires putting our agenda aside sometimes and putting in front of us the agenda and the needs of other people because we realize their humanity. I think this is what Jesus was talking about right as he came to the end of his earthly life. He met with his team and he was trying to build into them, trying to be super clear on what he was leaving them to do. And the night before, his final day on earth before his death, he's meeting with his team and he's kind of like, hey, I'm gonna give you a new command. I know you've had a lot of commands in the past, but I got one more. I want to just make it super clear. We've gone from 600 laws in the Old Testament to 10, the big 10, and then pretty much I summed it up in like love God, love others, and then I even said, hey, just love others the way you want to be loved. So I'm going to make it clearer than that. He says, a new command I want to give you, and if this sounds familiar to you, that's a good thing because we talk about this all the time at Crosspoint because it's uber important. If we're not getting this right, we're missing the whole point of what Jesus was about. He said, a new command I give you. And in this next statement, he gives one transgenerational, transcultural statement that literally has the ability to change the world. He says, a new command I give you. I just want you to love one another. And of course, his team was like, Jesus, we've heard that before. He's like, yeah, well, I'm not done. Hang on just a second. He says, I want you to love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And this became the litmus test for card-carrying Jesus followers. And think about it, it involves nothing remotely religious. It's a litmus test for unexpected heroes. It's relational, has very little to do with how we interact with God. It has mostly everything to do with how we treat other people. Right? It's a sense of when I follow Jesus, it's not about how can I get closer and closer to this God who's out there somewhere, somehow, in the cosmos, but it has more to do with demonstrating a devotion to putting the person next to me ahead of me and coming along and saying, what can I do to help? How can I love them the way my Savior, my rescuer, my leader in my life love me? That's what unlikely heroes do. And then he went on, he said, by this, everyone's going to know. And you're like, Jesus, what is everybody going to know? Everybody's going to know that you're my disciples. If you do something, if you love this way. In other words, when you do this, you are going to shine like stars in the sky in the dark world around you. Simply by allowing humanity to show. By putting the people around you ahead of you. Because that's what unlikely heroes do. I texted my son a couple days ago, the first day he started class this week. He's a freshman. And I was reflecting back to that convocation moment where I had tears streaming down my face, just as I was thinking about the Butler Way, and I was so inspired by it. And I just said to him, I said, Matt, I just want you to know, man, you are exactly where you need to be. There couldn't be a better place for you than where you are right now. Your leadership, your humility, your genuine empathy, the way you care for others and try to cheer others on ahead of yourself. You emulate the Butler Way, but see, here's the thing. I think that's why you were drawn here, but you have a choice. And the choice is whether you're going to not just experience it, but you're going to make Butler better because you help others experience it. Because, see, there's a choice. See, back to Moses. Moses had something that every single one of us have. And it was just that he chose to be available. He was willing to be available. He chose to be willing. As we wrap up, I want to give you a couple next steps, a couple things you can do. And certainly you can, God may be prompting you ways way outside of this. But I want you to take your device, and I want you to open up the connection card that we filled out earlier to the next steps. I just want you to hold that in your hands. In fact, you might even choose to hold your hands just open in front of you, on your lap. Doesn't have to be up in the air. It's just a way of saying, God, I want to choose to be willing. I don't fully know how this is going to go. I don't even know what this is going to look like. I don't know what it's going to require of me. But if you want to use me, I'm willing. And I just wonder what form your life would take on if we were to approach every day just saying, okay, God, I'm willing. See, heroes see what everybody else sees, but they're not content doing what everybody else does. Heroes, they say, hey, I'm going to hold my hand up when nobody else does. I think there's a desperate need for unlikely heroes in our world today. I want to give you 2 ways you can walk that out this week. Number one, would you be willing to just choose to be available, to choose to be willing this week? With your 168 hours that you have between right now and this time next week, to show your humanity. It doesn't require anything super religious at all. It's just paying attention. It's stopping and saying, I'm going to put my agenda aside when I see somebody that's struggling. I'm going to come alongside them. I'm going to ask them how they're doing. I'm going to put them ahead of me. I'm going to go to the back of the line so I can elevate someone else. I'm going to offer them my strength. I'm going to ask the question, what can I do to help? You will be amazed if you approach every day with hands open like this. You will become an unexpected, unlikely hero every single day. The second way, if you're somebody who calls Crosspoint home, I believe God's looking for unlikely heroes here at Crosspoint. We call them volunteers. That's why we thanked them a few moments ago. People who help others experience more and more of God in their lives. I mean, that's our goal. That's why we're here, to help people find their way to God, to experience Him, to begin to follow Jesus. That's what heroes here in this place do. They help people experience this transcendent experience of God Himself through serving coffee and just offering a warm drink to someone when they come in, a friendly welcome inside the front doors. I mean, the band up here singing, inspiring us. I mean, God's using them as unlikely heroes so that we can experience something transcendent. Sitting in kids' environments in a small group on the floor, saying, man, it's awesome we have these kids here, but you know what? I'm not content just seeing that they're here. I want to be a hand raiser. I want to be a part of helping them transcendently experience a God who knows them and loves them and wants them to know Him. Our teams operate on a 2 times a month volunteer schedule. Perhaps for you, it's if you're here and you're not on a team, it right now is a choice where you can go, you know what? I'm going to choose to be willing. So as you sit here, I just want us to sit here for a moment and just allow God to kind of just, maybe guide our thoughts. I want you to ask yourself, what does this look like for me? How can I do this in the 168 hours of the next week? God, how can you use me as an unlikely hero here at Crosspoint, helping people experience you? The decision, it's a decision we have to make. Are you willing? So let's just sit. Let's just allow God to kind of speak to us in this moment.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Heavenly Father, thank you for being willing. Thank you for choosing to be willing. I mean, you had all the power, all the position. You had every reason to pull the God card and bring your son back up. You said, no, I'm gonna go back to the end of the line. I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna see humanity. I'm gonna see their struggle. I'm gonna get involved. I'm not gonna choose to turn my head. And God, we're here because of it, and we are so thankful. We're so grateful. And so as we think about what it means to be willing, what it means to reflect your love, what it means to love others the way you have loved us, God, I just pray that you help us to know what to do. I pray that you give us the courage to respond. I pray that you give us the awareness that we have this within us and that you're not bound by what we think our weaknesses or limitations are, but that if we're willing, you can use anyone. Because it's not so much what we don't have as much as it is who you are. So God, I just pray that you help us to see what others see, but not be content doing what others do. Not be content just idly sitting, but to join you in what you're doing. Thank you for the story of Moses, this unlikely hero that's so inspiring to us. Thank you for Jesus. wouldn't allow any barrier, any wall, or any hill to stand in the way of us knowing and having a clear pathway to relate to him. So we just thank you for this. We thank you for these things according to your character, Jesus. Amen. You know, perhaps the most amazing thing about Jesus is that he actually did for us the very thing he invites us to do for others. I mean, the very next day, you know, right after he said, hey, a new command I give you, I want you to love others, not just the way you want to be loved, but the way I've loved you. He actually staged a demonstration that took their breath away. He staged a demonstration that took their sin away. In fact, it did way more than that. It took their excuses away. See, the next day, he actually did physically lay down his life as a model, as an example, just illustrating the very thing he'd been building into his team. And he put on display what it means to love and serve and pay attention and go to the end of the line and to love sacrificially. And he gives us this meal as a way to celebrate and remember it. So we're going to share in that meal today. So if you're at home and you have your bread and crackers or beverage sitting there, you can go ahead and grab that. And for those in the room, if you want to take out your bags, this is one of those moments where he said, I want you to have something tangible and physical to be reminded. Because we so easily forget that we're here not because of anything we've done, but because of the amazing, reckless love of our Heavenly Father. This is a meal, the Eucharist, the Mass, the Lord's Supper, the Holy Communion. It's been shared by followers of Jesus for hundreds of years, centuries, by people who are running after the heart of God. And so if this represents your life, if you're somebody who's received Jesus as your Savior, we invite you to share in this. If this doesn't represent your life, then it doesn't really mean anything, and so you can just kind of sit and observe and watch. Or if you want to make this a moment of profession, of receiving Jesus, of saying, Jesus, I want to know you as my Savior, then we invite you to make this your first communion. Jesus, when he was with his team on that final night, he sat around the table and he took bread off the table. And they didn't fully know what he was about to do. He'd been trying to prepare them. But he took the bread. I want you to go ahead and take the bread. And he said, you know, every time you eat this bread from this day forward, I want you to remember my body, which was broken for you. Because I want you to remember that I easily could have claimed my position. I could have used my power, but no, I actually went to hell and back for you. My body was thrashed for you. That's the way I loved. And so every time you eat this bread, I just want you to remember. If in case you ever wonder, I just want you to be reminded of my immense love for you. And so I invite you to take and eat, receive the body of Christ. And then he took the beverage off the table. It would have been wine in his case. He said, from this day forward, every time you share in this cup, I want you to remember my death, my bloodshed, my life source that was given for the forgiveness of sins. Because there always had to be the giving of one life in order to preserve another. And so he became the perfect lamb that covered all of our sins. And he said it's available to the many who will receive it, which you go, oh my gosh, I thought it was for everybody. Well, it is, but not everybody receives it. He said only many will receive it. And so as you take the cup and you receive the cup, I want you to be reminded of Jesus pouring his life out so that you could live another day, so you could experience another day of life, that you could experience eternity with him. Let's take the cup. This is the reckless love of our Heavenly Father. Let's go ahead and stand. We're gonna sing this song and just allow this to remind us of what Jesus did for us and how it calls us, it inspires us to be this kind of people for our world. So let's stand and sing together.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your
we hope you're feeling that reckless love of God coming through the screen and landing in your living room this weekend. If you liked what you experienced today, please like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you won't miss any of the action here at Crosspoint. Also, please don't forget to hit send on that connection card because we'd love to hear from you. And if you need prayer today, you can text the keyword "need prayer" to the number on the screen, and our prayer team will reach out to you shortly. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week.